Is your husband still in France?
Thank you very much indeed
Lovely
for
to see
tuning in to watch the Jewish Schmooze live. And don't forget that we always want you to comment along as the discussion unfolds, and we'll try and read out some of those comments. So whether you're watching us on Facebook, comment along. If you're watching us on Twitter, tweet us using hashtag Schmooze. Or, of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can always comment on there as well. I think that's everything. Lastly, that's the word, I can't speak. Sorry, I have got a cold. Did you tune in to the programme as a whole? jewishviews.co.uk. Right, we're good to go.
I just realised views and schmooze rhyme.
I thought that's why
As
you chose
does news.
As does
I
news.
thought that's why you chose
News,
schmooze,
views and
'cause news,
schmooze.
views,
Are we
schmooze.
live? To put this, yes, we are
We are
live.
live on-
All of this riveting conversation is going out live. Just to put it into some sense of perspective, you're about to watch the Jewish Schmooze live as part of the Jewish Views in association with the Jewish News.
There we go.
And let's hurry up and get finished so I can go for Jewish booze.
He's on form tonight, even though he's got a cold.
He's a great chap. He's a lovely young man.
I wouldn't go so far as to say that.
Right, thank you, Emma.
I'm very fond of young Phil.
I'm fond of young Phil, but I wouldn't go to say
He's aging
though.
He's a marvellous fella, actually.
Okay, you lot, we are still live and you're making me go bright red.
Lucky you can't be seen on YouTube then.
Well, quite. Okay, let's begin, shall we?
You're listening to the Jewish Views, and this is the Jewish Schmooze, the part of the show where studio guests join me, Clive Rosalind, to discuss matters that you've been hearing throughout the programme so far. Joining Tony Honigberg and me today is retired audio book reader Denise Asserson and journalist and author Emma Klein. And the subject today is based on what we heard Diana talking to Karen Pollock about shortly a while ago. We now know the potential plans for a new Holocaust memorial outside the Palace of Westminster have been revealed. But the question is, how relevant is it outside the home of British democracy? And Denise, you can start us with this discussion. Do you think it's an appropriate place to house such a memorial, and why?
No, I don't really think it's a good place, but where else is there in London that is a good place?
That's a good question. But why don't you think it's a good place?
Because I'm not quite sure how Jewish they all feel in there.
Well, there are an awful lot of Jews in there.
Yes, but I think they could find a better place.
But Denise, if we shouldn't worry about how they feel inside the Houses of Parliament, is that a good place or not? Or where would you put it if that's not a good place?
Well, that's what I was asked Emma.
Well, I wouldn't know. All I know, if it shows respect for the victims of the Holocaust and their descendants, wherever it is fair enough.
Well, I think it's an absolutely ideal place because it's outside the Palace of Westminster, which is the home of British democracy.
Oh, absolutely.
And these people who were murdered were all murdered by the Nazis, and which was the exact opposite to British democracy, which was saved by Winston Churchill.
Well, that
good
is,
point. Very good
yes,
point.
That is true.
And so it's very important to put it there.
It's a good place to put it. But we could have, I mean, it could be anywhere in London, really, I guess, couldn't it? It could be by the British Museum in Kensington. Could be in one of the parks. It could actually
why?
be.
No, I think
Why?
Clive's
Just tell
point is
me
a very good
why.
point.
Because we are an open society and we are free to go anywhere. So you could put it absolutely anywhere in London because we're a free society. We're not restricted by going.
Yes,
anywhere.
we all know that. But the fact is, by putting it, as I said a moment ago, by putting it next to Parliament, which is the place where our democracy has existed for many, 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 many years, if not centuries, that's the place it has to go.
I suppose.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, what do you think, Emma? Yes.
Well, I agree with Clive. I mean, it shows respect, and that is a very important place, as Clive said, the home of our democracy. And I think maybe that is the most convincing way of showing respect, rather than if it was plonked in Golders Green, sorry to be rude, that wouldn't be so
It could be
respectful.
Trafalgar Square or somewhere where a lot of people go.
True, but I mean, I think the home of the democracy, as Clive said, is a good point.
Quite interesting. If it's, I mean, the Holocaust memorial is very relevant to Jews, but how relevant is it to the rest of British society?
Well, there is a Holocaust Memorial Day in January in this country.
It has to be kept alive because the Holocaust is possibly the most ghastly thing that happened in modern Europe, in the world. And if you think about it, it wasn't just 6 million Jews who were murdered.
Gypsies.
There were
The
another
gypsies and
4
all the other
million
people.
other people.
Yes.
Poles
Yeah.
and
Gypsies,
gypsies,
yes.
and
So it's absolutely essential that this should be kept alive. We talk now.
We
about-
now include other genocides, though, don't we, as Holocaust Memorial Day?
Yes, there are other Holocausts, but
Yeah.
there's never been one quite as bad as this. And I find it very frightening that I sometimes meet young Jewish children who don't know about the Holocaust.
They're not taught it.
Oh
are
yes,
they?
that's very
that
true.
is a bit disturbing. Yes.
Yeah, but it's not just the Jewish children
No,
who should know
no.
about it.
No, I mean, for example, I don't think it was probably last year, not this year, at Holocaust Memorial Day, my husband, who's the son of Holocaust survivors, wrote an article for the Catholic journal The Tablet, which I often contribute to, and it got so much praise from the editorial staff, so much praise. It was quite touching.
Did it get any comments? I know we're drifting off subject slightly, but did it get any comments from the readers, or just from the
Maybe there were some letters. I'm not
You
sure.
can't remember.
Have
Possibly.
you read
I-
Hitler's Pope?
Hmm?
Hitler's Pope.
Hitler's, no.
The
Well, I've
book.
heard of it. It
So
sounds a
I
very
mean, the
interesting
Catholics
book.
they also gave an awful lot of passports to the
Yes,
criminals.
they're
That's interesting.
Well, there were a lot of righteous amongst nations, of
sure,
course there were.
There
in
were.
the- in the
Yeah.
And of course,
So-
Pope Francis, I think, is quite was he from Argentina?
He's from
Quite-
Argentina.
Quite
Yes,
close to
yes.
the Jewish
Yes.
community there.
Yes, absolutely.
No,
He-
and
he
I
is-
thought, I think you're absolutely right. I think it is a good place.
It's the absolutely
Yes.
right place
And of
because
course, it was John the 23rd who made it quite clear that the in 1965 that Jews did not. No, was it Pope Paul VI maybe? But it was inspired by John the 23rd. The Jews did not kill
Kill Jesus.
yes, that
That
was
was
also very
very
important.
And that's
Nostra
very
Aetate,
important to know.
very important.
So,
And it's also important because sadly, very sadly, and I was talking to some people about this the other day, the anti-Semitism in this country, which was very low, is getting worse.
Yes.
Oh yes.
it is getting
very
worse and worse.
disturbing,
Well,
yeah.
were that having a Holocaust memorial then outside of Parliament, will that increase anti-Semitism?
Well,
No, maybe not.
it makes it more public, I think, because what did stop anti-Semitism to a certain extent among people in this country who did not really know about the Holocaust was the people, the survivors, who came and talked about it publicly.
Oh yes.
Not just to Jews, to
Mm.
everybody.
Sure,
Yes.
sure, very
But
important.
they are now, there are very few of them
Yes.
left. Very, very few. of
We're
them.
working, or I am with my shul that I go to. We're discussing whether to now have the children of survivors talking about their parents who survived the Holocaust.
But did the parents talk much? I
Well,
thought they
yes,
Oh,
did.
that's
they
a-
didn't early
that's a
on, but
very good
they did
point.
start to come
That's
out.
an
It's nice to
excellent
hear
point Tony's made.
from the children. We haven't quite got round to sorting all
That
that
is
out because the
marvellous.
survivors are dying off,
Sure.
and we mustn't let the stories die off with the
Well,
survivors.
my husband very much regrets, although he did find out quite a lot, that he refused to have his parents speak to him about the Holocaust because it was too painful. Whereas my mother-in-law and I communicated a lot about it in whatever language. We didn't really have a common language, but a bit of this and a bit of that. Because I was Sephardi and our family hadn't suffered, and I was very interested, so I heard all her
It's
stories.
interesting you
Very
said your
interesting.
family didn't suffer because the Sephardim in Zimbabwe, who all came from Rhodes Island,
Right.
many of their relations who did not come to Zimbabwe were taken into concentration
That was
camps
terrible, yeah.
and were murdered. And I met a man one day who had married when I was out in Zimbabwe, which is where I was born, and I was out there on a holiday. And I met a man who had been born on Rhodes Island and who had been taken at the age of 5 to Auschwitz, and who
How
said
he survived?
that he had lived there and he was the only one of
The children.
5 know, they're only one of 5 survivors of all the Rhodes Island community. There were only 5 of them left. And if you go to Rhodes Island now, it is a very sad place because the synagogue has a congregation, and I'm talking about some years ago, but at the time I went there, the synagogue had a congregation of about 7 people.
Oh, that's really sad, isn't it? As a lot of
So
European
that's
countries.
why we get back to the subject. That's why it's so important that this memorial is put next to the house where Parliament meets.
I think
rather
it's a very
than
good
palace.
Do you think there would be, in the position it's in, such an open position, it'd be open to vandalism?
Well,
Or would it be
it'll
just like
be-
anywhere else?
It'll be protected anywhere. It can be it's open
Yeah,
to.
that's interesting. But very interesting what you said, that the children didn't want to hear from the parents, because it's usually the parents that don't speak to the children about
Well, I think
it.
my mother-in-law was willing to speak, but my husband didn't want to. As I say, much later, well, I suppose because I had heard, he must have investigated. He obviously knew the whole story, but he didn't really want her to tell
Most
him.
of the survivors that now go out and talk to schools also didn't want to talk. It was only the Holocaust Memorial Trust or Memorial Education Trust, or whatever its
Yes.
title is, that they talked to them, and they almost made them go out and talk to the schools and other places about their experiences. And once they'd gone out there once or twice to talk about it and
Then they
seeing
go
the
on doing it.
reaction
Sure.
of people,
And did you know the word genocide came from that from the Nuremberg trials? 'Cause I'm
Really?
reading East West Street.
it's
by
Oh,
Greek,
is
isn't
it?
it?
Yes,
Isn't
I
it
saw
Greek
it.
And
genocide?
and he was so
I heard about it at
Yes,
JW3.
yes.
Very interesting.
There was a time that I was invited 2 or 3 years ago to talk to, and I'm sorry I cannot remember her name, a very, very famous woman, she became famous, who had been in Auschwitz. And she, for years, did not speak about her experiences. And suddenly she decided to. And she told us many, many things in this interview I had with her. And she said something which I have never forgotten. At the end of the interview, I said to her, "Do you still believe in God?" Because she'd come from a very religious family.
Interesting.
And she said, "When I left Auschwitz, I did not. I had become a complete atheist. But then one day I had a child, and I held up my baby, and I knew there was a God."
Oh, it's
Lovely
beautiful. It's
story.
beautiful.
And that, I have never forgotten what she said.
I have interviewed a number of these survivors over the years for podcasting and radio and everything else, and with an audience of youngsters, usually 13, 14, 15-year-olds, and I've looked round at these audiences and some of the answers to my questions, I have seen tears coming out. Not just the girls, who are often more emotional than the boys, but from the boys as well, of that age,
Yes.
listening and taking in what the survivors have been saying and what happened to them. But tears, real crying.
Very
And I've seen some of them are just, you can't console them at all.
Well,
you know.
one soldier who was one of the Americans who went in to rescue, into
liberate-
Auschwitz,
liberate.
he became really ill for the rest of his life,
Mm.
just
Oh.
seeing it.
Just seeing
And
it.
he was not a
Traumatised.
Jew.
Yeah.
Traumatized totally.
I'm reading a fascinating book at this present moment, which is about Anne Frank.
Oh, right.
And it's by a German soldier. He was not a Nazi, but he was in the German army. And he's written this book about the background to Anne Frank. And he is completely and utterly moving in this book because he has learned all these things from all the people he's gone to talk to who knew Anne Frank. And I think, therefore, it's terribly important that all this is kept alive. And it leads you on to another thing, because as you probably heard, the news has come out that Oscar Gröning, who was the 90-year-old former Auschwitz death camp guard, who was convicted in July 2015 as an accessory to murder, was sentenced to 4 years imprisonment, but has remained free pending the appeal and a decision on his fitness for prison. Now the question is there much point in sending Groening to prison, given his age and given how long ago he carried out his crimes? Or is it important, in the name of justice, to show that such acts won't be tolerated ever again? And this has made me think about this from what we've just been saying.
Well,
Yeah.
I think the publicity would help if
Yes.
he talked about what he did. If somebody came forward and talked about what he did, if they're still alive.
Well,
Then the
he's
publicity-
96.
He's
and
96.
He's
that was
96.
96.
Has
But
he-
it doesn't matter. The publicity of what happened would bring this all alive again.
So it's the publicity that's necessary, not
That's
the fact
all.
that he's sent to prison.
No, I mean,
Has he expressed any regret?
I honestly don't know the answer to that,
No,
but
I
he has been having this case saying, I should not go to prison. I'm 96, and anyway, I didn't actually kill any
Oh, yes.
Jews.
Oh,
I just
in-
made
in-
the list.
Oh,
in
yeah,
which
then he
case,
didn't express
by
regret.
what
That's
he's saying,
right.
I would say he should go to prison
Yes.
then,
Even
because
at the age of 96.
he's denying. Yes,
yes,
he's
I agree.
denying what
I think
happened.
he should too, but the
But-
publicity would help.
But the publicity, that's the
Even
point.
if it's for 6 months, I think he should go to
It should,
prison.
all the crimes come out of what he
Yeah.
did,
Yes.
and then that would
But now
happen.
he's denying it, so the crimes come.
This is
Yes.
the point that I think is so important. This is what the monument is all about as well, is that it has to,
To
be
be
kept
remembered.
in the front of people's minds.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Not
For
just
generations
Jews.
and generations to
Absolutely,
come.
absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
quite
Well, I'm
so.
afraid that we have to leave the discussion, but my thanks to our guests, retired audiobook reader Denise Asserson and journalist and author Emma Klein. Please do feel free to share your Jewish views with us. You can email studio@jewishviews.co.uk, or you can contact us via social media. Find us on Facebook by going to facebook.com/jewishviews, or on Twitter we are @JewishViewsUK. And of course, all of those details can be found on our website, jewishviews.co.uk. Well, it's time now for our rabbinic thought for the week, and this time it comes from Rabbi Michael Evan Dovid from Edgware Masorti Synagogue.
I'm just reading East-West Street by
Very
Philip Sands.
interesting. I went into the speak. Yes.
My son gave it to me.
We are still on
What are you doing now?
YouTube, by the way.
What are you doing now?
What I'm doing now, I'm actually going back home.
Oh yeah, by bus or?
No, I'm taking Clive, and I'm afraid I've got a terribly small car.
Well, don't worry.
Why? Where do you?
Well, I'm actually. I live in Hampstead, but what I'm doing now, I'm going to West Hampstead near Finchley Road to visit my cousin.
I will
and his
just
wife.
turn off. Thank you very much, everybody on YouTube who was watching. Same time next week. Good night.
But you're little.
I don't.